What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down new Ravens wide receiver Zay Flowers and his route running ability. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it could teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you would like to train with us this offseason, we are going to be traveling out to 5 more states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver camps. Our next 3 camps in Austin, Seattle, and Newark are completely sold out, but then we'll be coming out to Denver, Colorado, and Los Angeles, California. Those camps will sell out by the end of the month, fellas. So if you guys want to come out and train with us, again, check out that very first link in the description below. Let's get started with this video. So now, first things first, here we're going to be looking at this practice route from Zay Flowers, and I think his ability to change direction, cut on a dime, stop on a dime is just as good as anybody. So this is just a simple like 12 back to 10-yard curl route, but we're going to break down the hip drop, obviously, into this break. So I'm going to play it full speed one more time. So on every route, whether it's a 5-yard hitch, 15-yard comeback, 12-yard curl, what are we trying to make the DB think we're doing? Selling fade, right? We're running a fade. We're running deep. We were trying to run past him. Where our goal is to get him to open up his hips, turn and run, and then I break it down on a dime, whether it's a speed cut, whether I'm dropping my hips, to create that separation. Now, I say that, but that's much easier said than done, obviously. It is very, very hard to run full speed and cut on a dime like this. So what are some of the things that Zay Flowers does here that allow him to do that? And the first thing is a violent change of direction. So many wide receivers, they wonder why they're slow in and out of their breaks, right? They're thinking, oh, I'm selling vertical. I'm trying to cut on a dime. I'm sinking my hips, coach. Why can't I get in and out of the break? And it's because you're doing exactly that. You're sinking your hips. Now, what 2 words like sink and drop, which has a faster terminology, like faster, like aura around it? Probably drop, right? So you don't want to think of it like I'm slowly dropping my hips. Because when you have a ton of speed going into a break point and there's not urgency with this hip drop, you are not going to stop urgently. You have to put the brakes on and get to that low spot that you would get to when beating the drum or slowly sinking your hips right away. You almost want to think of it like you have a string attached to your chin and somebody took that string and pulled the string straight down to your knee. Because when you can do that, that violence with your hips, that aggression with your hips, will slow you down when you have speed going into the break. And not only will it slow you down, it puts you into an explosive position to where you can use that speed going into the break to accelerate you out of the break and get you out of the break with that much more speed. Now, the mistake that a lot of guys will make when they do that like trigger step or that like violent hip drop is they'll give away the route. They'll have an indicator with the route. So we talked about selling fade is all about running hard. You got to maintain your stride. You don't want to take choppy strides and shorten them before the break because that gives it away. But a lot of guys, when they try to drop, they will raise their pad level up. They'll get to this break point, and before dropping their hips, they will raise their chin up in the air, their chest up in the air to help them drop down. That's an indicator because a DB, especially if he's in man or especially if he's an off man, his eyes are reading your body language. He's looking at your hips. So he sees your hips rise, he's just going to sit. So we can have no indicators. Trust that hip drop. Now, when you trust the hip drop, a lot of receivers will also make the mistake of raising up their pad level because they reach. See this first step of this break right here? That's called a trigger step, right? So that trigger step, it like triggers the hip drop, right? That's like your snap down step, if you will. So a lot of wide receivers overdo it. They'll reach way outside their frame. They'll strike the ground on their heel, which puts them not only in a dangerous position when making a cut, they could hurt themselves, but their weight when you strike the ground on your heel shifts back, you pop up, you don't have any explosion, fellas. You guys got to strike, and you see Flowers when he does this. He's violent, but he's on the ball of his foot. That ball of the foot allows his cut leg to stay inside of his frame. This is a safe cut, but also he's got more balance, and that allows him to get out of the break with some speed. That is textbook right there in terms of dropping his hips on a curl route. Very, very excited to see how he runs routes with the Ravens playbook this year. Now, again, before we get into some game film examples of him running routes, this is another practice clip of him working just like a simple drill to work on almost like a whip route or like a slant out, if you will. So I want you to pay attention to a couple things. So let's watch his full speed. So he comes off, pushes out, drops his hips. This is like a slant out or a blaze out. They call it a blaze out when you take 3 steps. So 1, 2 is the pivot step, 3 is the hook step on like an out route. They call it a blaze out. This could be built off of a post out further downfield or a slant out, aka blaze out. So now Obviously, going into the blaze out, because you have to take 3 steps, you're trying to sell slant. So when you break to the slant, it's the same thing as that curl. You're trying to sell the route. You got to run hard, got to have good pad level, you got to have good stride, all of those things that tie into it. Now, obviously, to change direction, you need the same type of violent hip drop that we talked about. We need that level change. Chin goes to my knee, I'm pulling that string. I'm sitting my butt down. You almost want to think of it like you're playing musical chairs. Music stops, you're trying to sit down as fast as you can. Now, a lot of receivers do that. But at the break point, they still waste a lot of time. So receivers are famous for dropping into this break. They have this explosive hip drop, and then they take a million steps, and then they get out of the break, which at the end of the day would be the same exact thing as slowly dropping your hips. It's the same amount of time, fellas. Just because you had an explosive first step does not guarantee that you're out of the break quick. You have to be mindful of where your hips go after you snap down. So you see when Flowers snaps his hips here, I want you to pay attention to his second step. He snaps, and watch what the second step does. It pivots. So that pivot step will get his hips flipped. Then the third step is called his hook step that he can drive off of, push, and accelerate out of the break. So he was able to put the brakes on with the trigger, pivot, hook to get his hips flipped. And the faster you get your hips out of a break, the easier it is to separate from a DB. So this goes for any route, fellas, not just a slant out, because I know not a lot of you run a slant out. The routes change, but the mechanics of the break will always stay the same. So let's think about it. Let's go back to that curl example here. Watch what he does. He snaps on this outside foot, so he snaps. Watch what his second step does. Pivot, hook, and he's out of it, right? So how quickly can I get my hips in and out of a break? Maybe you're running a comeback. Your inside foot you break on, like let's say it's the right foot, your left foot should pivot right after it. Now, the mistake that a lot of receivers will make is that they're trying to get out of it too fast. Before they snap down and before they drop their hips, they'll start to turn their body because they're so concerned with that pivot step. You have to commit to it, fellas. You cannot be that guy that sells it, and then right before the break, he starts to turn and then drops his hips. You got to drop your hips to slow you down and decelerate. Then we have to flip my hips. The quicker you can flip your hips by pivoting and hooking the third step around, the more separation you will get, like we said. So let's play this again full speed. This is a great example of that and how he is so good at changing direction. Again, he's violent with his movements. He's able to get in and out of breaks quickly. So now, next example here is he's running this like goal line, I guess you could say slot fade route, if you will. This is not a good ball from the quarterback at all, but he does a great job adjusting to it. But I want to pay attention to his release. So I always judge a wide receiver on how he runs routes by his football IQ. Does he know how to run routes versus specific coverage looks? Does he know how to change up his routes based on coverage looks? And Flowers can absolutely do that. So let's play this full speed. So he comes off here, closes the space, gives a move inside, and then is able to separate on that slot fade. Again, ball was underthrown, not the greatest throw in the world, but still gave his guy a chance. So the mistake that a lot of wide receivers will make when they have this inside leverage coverage is that and they have an outside route like a slot fade route, is they will just take off and go run. Right? And I think that the guys who watch our videos do a great job of knowing that, okay, I got to attack his leverage inside, then get to my outside route, whether that's an out route, a comeback, or like a slot fade like this. But the mistake that I think all wide receivers make is they don't close the distance enough with a DB. Because on the goal, anytime it's man coverage, what's the goal? The goal is to be able to stack the DB. Maybe not stack directly over the top on a slot fade, but get it to where he is trailing our hips, right? I don't want him running right hip to hip with me, getting hands, trying to squeeze me to that sideline and cut down the field space. I want to try to stack him. So I have an easier job stacking him when I close the distance with him off the line. What do I mean by that? So if you guys were to go here and let's say we break this DB's ankles off the line. Let's say he does a great like kind of triple move, gets the DB to jump to the inside, but there's like a yard or two of space between the two of them. This receiver, Flowers, still has to get to the goal line. This DB can cut off the angle because we did not close the space. What we want to do is we want to eat up the cushion. Anytime there is space, I want to close the space. See how close Flowers gets to him, almost stepping on his toes, because that won't only threaten him to the inside and hold him there, because we want to attack his leverage, because that DB's responsibility when he's inside shade is to protect the inside. So let's threaten him to the inside, but let's actually threaten him. Let's step on his toes. Let's try to close the cushion. So when I push up vertical, I could go hip to hip with him, be able to get a step on him, get some leverage on him, stack him if it's an open field route, but I have to close that space. So that is a textbook slot fade there from Flowers. Fellas, you get this type of look, you get any space from a DB. you have to close the space. Do not be that guy that is afraid of contact and just tries to run around, because he will beat you to the angle and he will squeeze you to that sideline. Let's play this again, full speed one more time. Great job by Flowers, closing the space, stepping on the toes, and then winning on that fade. All right, fellas, so next route, this is going to be a stutter go, like stop and go, if you will. It's kind of a unique way to run this, but I want to talk about, again, that change of direction, right? So this is obviously a DB who's in zone coverage, eyes are to the inside. His responsibility is probably like the deep third of the field, right? Don't get beat deep. Keep everything in front of you. So when he's trying to keep everything in front of him and he is taught not to get beat deep, he's probably not going to crash on a whole lot of underneath routes because he has help underneath. Like he's got a linebacker who's maybe vacating to the flats, or a safety who's going to the flats, or a nickel, whatever it is. So he's probably not going to bite on a lot of underneath routes, or at least he shouldn't. But my mindset as a wide receiver is I'm going to make him bite by selling the move. And that's exactly what Flowers does here. Let's play this again full speed. So he comes off, drops his hips, changes levels, gets the DB to stop his feet, and then he's able to win over the top on that stop and go. So let's break it down. When you guys are running a stop and go, a stutter go, a hitch and go, whatever it is, you guys actually have to commit to the move. You guys actually have to slow yourself down. So we know, based on the first example and second example that we looked at of him just running routes, t-shirt, shorts, no defense, how do we slow ourselves down when running at a high speed? You got to drop your hips, and you got to drop your hips violently. So you see when he drops, he gets low. He sits his butt down, chin goes to his knee. He's changing levels. He changed his speed by doing this. And when a DB is not looking at us, our change in speed is what's going to get him to crash. Like if he's watching us, let's say he's an off man and his eyes are on me, the hip drop and us getting low kind of puts the brakes on, and that gets him to crash because he's looking at my hips. But I need to actually change speed. A lot of wide receivers, what they'll do is they'll run up and they'll just give like a little quick stutter and then go. That's not enough, fellas. You have to draw this dude in by changing your speed, by changing your pad level, and that's what gets him to crash. So I'm going to play this again full speed one more time. This is a textbook stop and go here. Great job changing speed, getting the DB to crash, and then separating back over the top. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you would like to train with us, we are coming out to 5 more states this offseason, but also check out that very first link below. If you are a quarterback or wide receiver coach, we are having a 2-day coaching clinic in July. So check out that very first link in the description below for more information on any of our events. I'll see you guys next time.